Welcome back to the Senior Hour. I'm Barbara Cochran with my co-host, Dr. Jean Dorio, on your hometown station, AM 1220 KHTS. And we're speaking with Linda Davies. She's the Executive Director of the Domestic Violence of the Santa Clarita Valley.
Hey.
And yes, and we've had a very interesting conversation so far. But, you know, I'd like the listeners to know how the Domestic Violence Center got started. And it was in the very, very early 70s. And I was running the Hotline We Care, which was a 24-hour hotline for people to call in with their problems so that they can talk to someone. And that someone would be understanding and listen, when a lot of times during their life, they don't have anybody to talk to. Mm-hmm. And so in those very early 70s, the Santa Clarita Valley had a big problem with drugs and alcohol, especially among teens and young adults. And we used to get calls about that. My girlfriend hit me, or my boyfriend hit me, and those calls gradually went up the ladder. We'd get older women calling, saying, my husband is not letting me have any money when I need to go buy this, and this. He's very controlling. And there were several community members, Dr. John Legler, who's a practicing psychologist up here, and I think several women in his office, and Joanne Darcy, and so many of us, and me included, Dr. Janet Nisselson, who has since deceased. She was a psychologist, and we went through the health council, the SCV Health Council, and were able to, with everybody's help, get a domestic violence center started up here. It was very small to begin with, but we found a home out on Route 126, where 5 and 126 come together. I think there's massive buildup in there now, but there was a home back there. And several of us went through there to, inspect it, and we rented it. And this had occurred. That occurred after this group that I was involved with had gone to Antelope Valley and checked out their domestic violence center, had gone down to Haven Hills and different places to find out all of the wherewithals about starting something like this, because we all knew it would be a massive project. Mm-hmm. But we got funding from various companies who were involved in the Health Council, and of course through Baxter Ward at the time, because he was the supervisor then. And, of course, Joanne Darcy was an immense help with us. But we got it started and got it going. And through the years, it kind of had its ups and downs where, board members get in and squabble and really not pay attention to what's going on. But over the years now, it has become very, very stable. It really has. Thanks a great deal to you, Linda, since you've been here.
Oh, well, thank you.
You've really put it into a forward-moving organization where we're helping hundreds of women and some men in this community, along with children.
Absolutely.
And we have a fantastic board of directors.
We do. We have a really good board of directors and a good staff.
One of the problems in the early times was that they had abused women on the hotline, on the board of directors of the Domestic Violence Center, which was not good because they didn't have an overall picture of life. All they had was, me. And that didn't serve the board well. And, throughout the years, like I said, there have been all of these ups and downs. But you've really saved it so far.
Well, I mean, I had a lot of help. So the community's been really very kind to us.
Board members and you've got a fantastic staff there.
Yes,
absolutely.
Definitely. Yes.
And I think it's a very, very successful organization. And we do a lot of good.
I think we do.
Really
I mean,
do.
the beauty of what we do is we help women, children, and men to transform their lives, you know, and there's times like when there was a hotline call, and not every hotline call that we have the resources to give them what they need, and we will resource them out to another shelter that may have more services for them. Okay, like we can take somebody in a wheelchair, like we can get them in our house, but our bathroom is not wheelchair accessible. So we would really have to talk to them about whether they could get themselves from like the doorway onto the toilet. I mean, we'd have to really, but there are shelters who have wheelchair accessible everything. That's just because they started more as a new program, and so they built their building. So the building was to code. You know, ours is an old home that we had to renovate to do as a shelter. So, but I do think that we're able to offer, and I think that when seniors call us, what we really want to do is make sure that we help them understand what domestic violence might look like, even if it's not a physical. And so I have a few things that I want to just share that could be something for them to pay attention to.
Oh, yes.
Like if you have a person, a family member or caregiver who's telling you that you can never do anything right, because self-esteem is really an emotional and psychological abuse is the most long-lasting abuse that will take effect. And really you begin to believe, especially when you start to lose control of certain things in your life, like you lose control of your health, or you're losing control of maybe you're not working anymore, and so your identity was around your work. And so these things, you're by yourself with people who really have a lot of control just because of your age, never mind the fact that they may be misusing that. Showing jealousy of your friends, and if you were to like spend time away, like, you know, that you're being invited out somewhere, and somebody might say, but, you know, I like it when you stay home with me and not see these people. Keeping you or discouraging you from you know, seeing the people that you care about the most, even to your family members, embarrassing or shaming you with put downs, controlling every penny that you have in your household. That's a big one that we hear about with elder abuse. We hear that with all abuse. But this could be something that other people might not notice that are happening. Taking your money and refusing to give you money for expenses, looking at you or acting in ways that scare you. We hear a lot of times an abuser may say, I can picture you dead, rolled up in that rug on the floor. I can, you know, taking out a knife and not necessarily, you know, like coming at you with it, but maybe, you know, just kind of toying with it and looking at you and just giving you that intimidation that could be something. But then if you were to call the sheriffs about that, it may be something that they say, well, you know, we didn't see it happen. It's difficult for us to judge.
They
okay.
Say he said, she said.
Absolutely. But another one is preventing you from making your own decisions. As long as you are still your own guardian, right? I mean, you're allowed to make the decisions that you need. And so that's something that, you know, somebody who's in a power and control relationship with you, that's something for you to be thinking about. We had a client once that we were called to the hospital for, where the person who was their abuser actually was controlling their insulin intake. And so every time she would get to the hospital, she would be at such a low insulin that they would keep her till they built her back up. And yet she believed he had convinced her that she couldn't take care of herself. All right. And she was an older woman, all right, where she felt totally dependent, and he was doing such a great job. But then she and it would eventually end up having, you know, feeling so sick and having to go to the hospital. Okay. And the hospital called us because they had seen it time and time again and knew that this was an abusive relationship, but she wasn't ready. Now, remember, the decision to get out of a relationship is the victim's. You know, no matter what we say or do, it's their choices. And so we can only give them the resources that they need. And so sometimes people won't feel okay to actually leave at that moment in time. So we can only plant seeds and give them those things. Another one is destroying your property or threatening to hurt or kill your pets. That's a really big one.
Especially pets.
Pets is a very big one. And they could do that with, imagine that, you've got this dog that you love, you're home, you're, you know, kind of housebound, and all of a sudden the person starts saying they're going to kill. These are red flags for you. If anybody out there is having any of this happening, this is something to call the elder abuse hotline about, and that number again is 877-477-3646.
Yes.
So it's 877-477-3646. Again, you know, pressuring you to use drugs or alcohol, that's another one that we hear, even as an older person. Now, somebody might be in as your caregiver, and they may be somebody who likes to drink, and you don't really want to drink. But it's like you're not I need you to do this with me. I'm your companion. This is what companionship is. I mean, all these things that you need to be thinking about that seem subtle sometimes, but they're not subtle. They really are the misuse of power and control, and that really is what domestic violence is.
Mm-hmm. That's true. Power and control.
Power and control.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
so
it comes in all forms.
Absolutely. So those are just some of the things that I thought might be kind of, something that people that are in a caregiving situation or in. And if you're at the senior center and you feel like things are going wrong, you can always talk to a social worker there. I know we've gone and we've done workshops to kind of let people know, because the other thing we really want to talk to people about is what the law is and how the law can protect you. And so, if there is something and you do call the sheriffs because maybe the person does physically abuse you or scare you to the point where you actually are fearful for your life, you call the sheriffs, they'll come over. And when they're in your home, they will actually do what's called an emergency protective order. And that's good for 5 days. And that will actually keep the person who is out of... I think the scary part is if you're not able to take care of yourself, you must be thinking, how do I plan to do this?
Yep.
Who's going to be with me if I kick this person out or if I get this person arrested? It's elevated to a whole new level of fear. And I think that that's something where calling the elder abuse hotline before you make any moves and to make some planning, because we also safety plan on our hotline and they will safety plan with the elderly on their hotline.
So
all right.
Some of our listeners are thinking also, I am financially dependent on this individual and I'm stuck and I have to put up with this. So what do the guys and girls listening to our show right now, how do they turn around and say, calculate Social Security, Medicare, cost of living, how much water is, if we have any, gas or anything like that? How do we, get around that with the thought that, I have to tolerate this because I don't have any choice. I don't have money. I'm not coming in on my side, and I'm dependent on this individual. You tend to then think to yourself, I'm done, and I can't. That hotline won't do me any good, because I can call it, but if I'm out on the street and I'm homeless, which is the senior's biggest fear, then that does me no good to make that phone call. So where do we go with that?
It's a very, very big problem, isn't it, when you think about it?
It's a big problem.
I keep thinking when I'm talking about these people, the seniors that we're talking about with the caregivers, I'm thinking that they're people that want to stay in their apartments or want to stay in their homes and haven't... I don't know whether they're even living in like elderly apartment buildings or whatever. I would imagine that living in an elderly apartment building would give you more access to getting some help, and possibly your rent is. Even for myself. And I'm 63. I think about putting myself on some of these waiting lists. For when the time comes when I want to get an apartment, to go out and because it has to be something that's affordable for you on your Social Security. So I feel that this could be that these are people that are trying to stay where they have been, and they have a right to do that. But we also have to look at all the options. And that's why I believe that calling the senior hotline would be very helpful for them, because just like we problem solve, like we would talk to a woman who wants to leave and say to her, we can get you on cash aid. Like you can get, if you have kids, you can get on CalWorks, you can get on, go down to the Department of Social Services and they can get you some help with money for your kids right now, because you've got to get yourself at least some funding. But when the elderly we're talking about, there's also going to be those situations too where they would call the Department of Public Social Services to see what's available for them for that change. Is there any money in general relief? Is there any money in even disability insurance that they may not have gotten before? Looking at those things, but I don't know how that affects Social Security. This is a very complicated topic, right. And I think that we should actually maybe call the hotline ourselves
and see what they say.
Now,
I was trying and asking my question, of course, in the background of how I think. I trying to figure out the solutions already. And one of them, of course, right away, if you're alone in the world by yourself with this other person, well, that's a different ballgame. But most of our most of our seniors here in Santa Clarita have somebody else, have a family member. And I think that's where the first place I would turn to, if you can confide in them, feel comfortable with that, and just say, listen, this is what's going on, but I feel financially dependent. How can I not be abused and possibly survive after this relationship? So I think turning to a family members, your kids, relatives of some kind might be helpful. And then going to social services, getting a social worker in was another one that you just mentioned, Linda. And then another one might be an attorney. If you can afford an attorney, being able to say, okay, is this really, am I really that dependent on somebody's finances? Do I have a say in this? Because really could be that I do have a say in part of what is out there financially, and the legal system might define that better for me.
Right, absolutely.
So those are the things I was just thinking, there are probably some other ones that maybe the hotline could help us with. But.
I think so. I think that they probably, because I know for us, when somebody calls out, and this is the other thing, like, okay, so we have a shelter. When we get an older woman who wants to come into our shelter, we know that it's going to be really hard to place her afterwards in transitional housing. Transitional housing technically gets their money through, they get money per person. We don't get money per person. We just get a flat rate for what we do. But they don't always take a single woman who can't maybe get a job afterwards or can't. I mean, it's very selective. All right.
Whoa.
And it has, and so they would go for a family, but that's the way the funding is set up. It's not the transitional housing's problems. It's really the way funding's set up.
And funding is set up through government.
Through government,
Funding is set up through the people we
So if you have a
elect.
CalWorks contract, you can only take CalWorks clients, and CalWorks is really something that happens for women and children. Okay, so when you get to be, it's much more complicated when you get to be over. I mean, it's a red flag when my staff call me and they tell me they got somebody 60 or somebody 54 who wants to go into the shelter. We have to look at a number of things to make sure that we're the right place for them, and one of them is, where is she going to go after her 30 days? Yeah. Because the best place for anybody who's been in a domestic violence situation is to go into transitional housing, because then they're going to get education up through 6 months to 2 years. Okay, so hopefully they won't get in the same situation again. All right, so a lot of times we end up saying there may be another shelter that could give them something better than we could, and that would be maybe the shelter that has a transitional house attached to it, where they could roll that person kind of right into that, and there are some that do that.
It's such a shame, though, that there's so many convolutions of what we have to do, and everything just isn't straightforward from New York to Los Angeles to Santa Clarita, so that we don't have to be thinking about these things. It's too complex. We look at funding, we look at the individual cases. It gets a little bit too complicated sometimes for people to be able to handle some of this.
Oh, it absolutely is.
I'm really thankful that we have you and the Domestic Violence Center to be able to help out with that.
Right, and even for us, we have to still look at things too, because we'll get a case that we don't all the time. I mean, we'll get a case that we don't totally have the resources for, and we have to go back in, like either to look at we'll call neighborhood legal services and let that say, hey, we've got this client, what do you think we should do? And they may refer us to some document that we look at where we can kind of, write a letter and fight something for somebody, which we've been able to do.
And that's critical.
Yeah.
It really is.
But
you are
know,
there for those people, though.
Social services are set up to help somebody get through a certain period of time. But it's not an easy period of time. Like, you can't have savings, there's a lot of things you can't have. So you go in poor, and while you're on it, you stay poor.
That's right, and that's a negative there. But
right.
But anyway, let's get back.
I
to
know. I just had to say that. I think people. A lot of times we think,
Barbara, that's a big problem. That
I know. But the problem.
Why are we keeping people poor in this country? We should have the ability to advance, to move up, to have a job.
And that's what all those social services were for.
Yeah,
that's right.
Right.
That's right. And we need to take a break. We need to take a break. Yes. I have.
Oh, Barbara.
I have.
We're getting hot
over
and talking
here.
over here.
I'm Barbara Cochran with my co-host, Dr. Jean Dorio, on your hometown station, AM 1220 KHTS.
Doing right starts here at Union Bank. Community banking is at the heart of what we do. From giving customers more convenient access to their money to financing their homes here in the neighborhood, Union Bank believes in acting locally. We also believe that investing in local businesses helps everyone. For over 150 years, Union Bank has grown strong, one community at a time. We live here, we do business here, and we're here for you. Stop by your local branch today to experience the strength of community banking. There are 5 Union Bank branches conveniently located in the Santa Clarita and Antelope Valley area. To find your nearest branch, visit unionbank.com. Loans subject to credit and collateral approval. Financing available for collateral located in California, Oregon, and Washington. Fees and restrictions may apply. Terms and conditions subject to change. MUFG Union Bank NA member FDIC equal housing lender. Union Bank is a registered trademark and brand name of MUFG Union Bank NA.
Who says nothing good happens after midnight? Dennys is best known for their breakfast served round the clock, like the Grand Slam. But you can enjoy breakfast, lunch, or dinner in a casual atmosphere 24/7. At Dennys, the lunch and dinner menu has a variety of appetizers, craveable burgers, salads, and entrees, along with the best desserts in town. Wherever you live in Santa Clarita, there's a Dennys close by. If you're pulling an all-nighter or don't feel like cooking, get into Dennys today. Good stuff is happening at Dennys. At Advanced Audiology, we know how important hearing is to you, your loved ones, your work success, your safety, and your ability to stay in the game. Most people won't admit hearing loss to themselves or others. We make it easy for you. Today's digital hearing aids come in a variety of styles, including invisible. All feature-rich, providing unparalleled hearing quality, wearing comfort, and automation that simplifies your life. Don't be fooled by our imitators. There's only one Advanced Audiology with the purple sign next to AAA on Valencia Boulevard.
AM 1220, AM 1220, KHTS.
Will you still need me? Will you still feed me when I'm 64?
5 minutes.
Welcome back to the Senior Hour. I'm Barbara Cochran with my co-host, Dr. Jean Dorio, on your hometown station, AM 1220 KHTS. And Dr. Dorio, you got very mean at the end. Acted like you were mean.
I think so. I
But
think
you
I
were
became
angry
abusive.
at the government.
I was angry at the government for what
Yes.
they do to us and how they give. There's a lack of incentives to thrive, and that's
right.
to me is a huge problem. But we were talking about our seniors and how they could be abused, and we mentioned the clothesline project and the laundromat project, but we were trying to coin, and we were thinking laundromat project doesn't fit, but we were trying to coin something a little bit more worthy related to our seniors. So I thought, how about elder sensitivity project, which is ESP.
Oh, I like it. ESP.
yes.
We'll have an elder
sensitivity project.
That sounds like a
to
bunch of
make us
workshops
more-
we should be doing
make
out
us
in the community.
More aware about our seniors and their plight in the community.
We're going to have to be meeting after this.
Well,
chat about this.
speaking of elders and seniors, the next fundraiser coming up for domestic violence is the Rent-A-Santa program.
Yes, it is,
Remember?
Barbara. Yes, I
Zonta.
do.
Well, it originated at the Hotline.
Okay.
The original Hotline. Hotline We Care.
That's why we got it back.
They did it. There you go. They did it for probably 8 years.
Okay.
Zonta took it over when the Hotline disintegrated. And Zonta's been doing it for 10, 15 years. And they didn't want to do it anymore, so I suggested, whoa, the domestic violence could use that. I mean, it's not a big fundraiser, but yet it's a fun raiser.
Right.
It really
And we
is.
like fundraisers at the Domestic
Absolutely,
Violence
and
Center.
what I wanted to key in on, many seniors play Santa.
Yes, they do.
They really do.
Yes.
We have quite a few of them. And it is a fun fundraiser because families get the enjoyment out of it. Kids do. There's nothing better than having Santa visit you, That's wonderful.
Yes, it is.
It really is. So that's what we're working on now. And we can always use
More Santas.
Santas.
So if anyone's out there listening to the Senior Hour that would like to be a Santa or a Mrs. Claus or an elf,
Yes.
we would love you to call the Domestic Violence Center at 661-259-8175. And I also want to give that hotline again, the senior abuse hotline, just so that we make sure we do this before we close today. It's 877-477-3646. But if you just want to call and ask if something seems abusive, you can also call our hotline. And our hotline here in Santa Clarita is 661-259-4357. Again, 661-259-4357, which spells out help.
So what was the difference between that 877 number you gave and the 259-4357?
Well, remember when I was talking a little bit about how it's harder for us to place people that are older, women that are older? That's what the elder abuse hotline is all about. They're going to be able to give you the exact resource. That's all they deal with. That's all that they will help you with. When you talked about getting a lawyer, they probably have pro bono lawyers that they could maybe, I mean, when I say a pro bono lawyer, you may get like a 45-minute kind of chat with them, and then maybe, you know, there's some other resources that you can get. But they would be able to help. They're specific to to a senior. That's really what it is.
So,
and so that's why.
259-435.
That's us.
7.
259.
That's us here.
That's Santa Clarita hotline.
But for Domestic Violence Center, it's 259-8175.
75. Yep.
Okay, great. So
Okay.
just so our senior, but if there's another hotline, the 877 number.
It specializes in senior abuse.
477
That's
3646.
nationwide.
That's nationwide.
Yes.
Yeah. It also though does pop up. It does pop up here when I look at elder abuse in California, because it was another one that I saw also. So they're going to be able to talk to somebody from California when they call.
Great,
Yeah,
Linda.
that's very, very important.
Super information
Very
today,
important.
as usual. It's important that our seniors understand where to go, not only the hotlines that they have access to, but recognition of the problems they might be facing that could impact their life in the long run. It's important you live at home here in Santa Clarita, comfortable, not being in fear, and you can do that. But if you are living in fear, you need to contact Linda and make sure that you get things straightened out. It's really important.
Thank you.
And if we have any projects, clothesline or a laundromat, we'll think about Elder Sensitivity Project, ESP, which is helpful. We are sponsored by Advanced Audiology and Santa Clarita In-Home Care. Listen to us next week on the Senior Hour. Now go and enhance your quality of life.